My grandmother left me $1 million, but the first sentence of her will made it clear the money wasn't a gift, it was a curse. To get it, I have to become the biggest financial backer of my sister's crystal healing empire, which I'm pretty sure is just one lawsuit away from being legally classified as a cult. The lawyer read the clause with the same dispassionate tone he used to announce her time of death, and all I could think was that Gran, in her infinite, loving wisdom, had just posthumously ruined my life. Let me back up. My name is Mark. I'm 32, I teach high school chemistry, and my idea of a wild Friday night is grading papers while watching a documentary about the migratory patterns of the monarch butterfly. My world is one of empirical evidence, of cause and effect, of things that can be proven. My sister, Chloe, on the other hand, lives in a world powered by vibes, lunar cycles, and the resonant frequencies of overpriced rocks. Chloe is 26, and for the last 3 years, she's been pouring her heart, soul, and every penny she could borrow into her brand, Aura Bloom. It started with selling rose quartz pendants on Etsy and has since metastasized into a full-blown spiritual wellness enterprise. She now offers bespoke aura cleansing sessions, which seem to involve a lot of sage smoke and interpretive dance, custom curated crystal grids to manifest your financial destiny, and her flagship product, frequency charged moon water, which is literally tap water she leaves on her apartment balcony during a full moon. She sells it for $40 a bottle. People buy it. Lots of people. I love my sister, I really do. But I see what she's doing as well, a scam. A beautifully packaged, Instagram-friendly Gwyneth Paltrow-proved scam. I've tried to talk to her about it. I've sent her articles on the placebo effect, on cognitive biases, on the complete lack of scientific evidence for crystal healing. She just smiles that serene, infuriating smile of hers and says, "Mark, you only see the world in 3D. I'm working in 5D. It's like trying to explain physics to a golden retriever. A very charismatic golden retriever who knows how to use TikTok." Our grandmother, Elena, was the buffer between our two worlds. She was the kindest soul you could ever meet, a woman who baked award-winning apple pies and believed in the power of both prayer and a well-timed hug. But she was also susceptible. In her later years, as her body started to fail her, she leaned more and more into the spiritual. She found comfort in Chloe's world. Chloe would bring her healing stones for her arthritis and perform Reiki on her aching joints. Gran would swear she felt better afterward. I'd argue it was the power of touch and affection from her granddaughter, not the lump of amethyst, but I never had the heart to say it out loud. To Gran, Chloe wasn't a scammer, she was a healer, a light worker, her biggest supporter. So, here I was, sitting in a stuffy lawyer's office that smelled of old paper and unresolved family disputes. The air was thick with the ghost of Gran's lavender perfume. Chloe was next to me, her eyes red-rimmed but already shining with a familiar, entrepreneurial glint. The clause was brutally specific. I was to inherit the full sum of $1 million, tax-free. However, a subclause, titled The Seed of Faith, stipulated that I was legally obligated to invest no less than $250,000 into Aura Bloom LLC as a primary investor. The funds were to be used for expansion, including securing a brick-and-mortar wellness studio and developing a new line of energetically aligned products. If I refused, the entire inheritance would be forfeited and donated to a charity for retired racing greyhounds. Which, don't get me wrong, is a noble cause. But I'm a public school teacher with a mountain of student debt and a car that makes a concerning noise every time I turn left. $1 million, wasn't just life-changing, it was a whole new life. It was a house. It was security. It was the freedom to maybe, for once, not check my bank balance before buying the name brand cereal. "Isn't it wonderful, Mark?" Chloe whispered, squeezing my hand. Her grip was tight, desperate. Gran believed in me. She really believed. I looked at her wide, hopeful eyes, and all I could see was a snake oil saleswoman who had managed to pull the wool over the eyes of the person we both loved most. And now, Gran's final act was to make me her accomplice. I spent the next week in a state of suspended disbelief. I'd go to work, explain the Krebs cycle to teenagers who were more interested in their phones, and all I could think about was that damned clause. I imagined writing a check for $250,000. I saw it flowing into an account that would be used to buy more shiny rocks, more sage bundles, more fancy bottles for tap water. I pictured the wellness studio, a minimalist space with lots of white paint, Pampers grass, and a giant, backlit sign reading "Vibrate Higher." I imagined the customers, vulnerable people looking for hope, for a cure, for a little bit of magic in a harsh world, and I saw my sister, my sweet, misguided sister, taking their money in exchange for false promises. My moral compass wasn't just spinning, it had shattered. On one hand, it was Gran's money, her dying wish. She wanted to help Chloe, to give her dream a foundation. Who was I to stand in the way of that? It felt like the ultimate act of disrespect, like spitting on her grave. She saw something in Chloe's venture that I didn't, a source of comfort, of hope. Maybe I was the arrogant one, blinded by my own rigid skepticism. But on the other hand, my conscience screamed at me. As a science teacher, my entire career was dedicated to promoting critical thinking, to teaching people how to separate fact from fiction. Funding Orla Bloom felt like a betrayal of everything I stood for. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the principle. It was about enabling what I saw as a predatory business model that profited from ignorance and desperation. How could I live with myself knowing that my inheritance was being used to potentially harm people, to lead them away from real medicine and real solutions? I decided to do some due diligence, hoping to find a way out. I spent a weekend deep diving into Orla Bloom's online presence. It was worse than I thought. The testimonials on her website were heartbreaking. "Chloe's Anxiety Way amulet has done more for me than years of therapy," one read. Another claimed a citrine crystal grid cured her husband's chronic migraines. This wasn't just harmless fun, this was dangerous. She was positioning her products as alternatives to legitimate medical and psychological treatment. All it would take was one person forgoing actual medical advice because they thought a rock would save them, and my money would be complicit in a tragedy. The website was also a master class in pseudoscience jargon. Words like quantum, energy, and vibration were thrown around with reckless abandon, stripped of their scientific meaning and twisted into marketing buzzwords. It was a word salad of nonsense designed to sound profound to those who didn't know any better. And at the bottom of it all, the fine print: "for entertainment purposes only," not a substitute for professional medical advice. A flimsy legal shield that did nothing to absolve the moral bankruptcy of it all. I had to talk to Chloe. I cornered her at our parents' house the following Sunday. She was in the kitchen, blending a kale smoothie that looked and smelled like lawn clippings. "Chloe, we need to talk about the will," I started, trying to keep my voice even. "I know. I'm already scouting locations," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "There's this amazing spot downtown, huge windows, great natural light. The energy is just transcendent. We could have a crystal bar, a meditation room, maybe even an infrared sauna. An infrared sauna? I asked, my eyebrow twitching. What does that have to do with crystals? It's all about holistic wellness, Mark. Detoxifying the physical body to align the spiritual body. It's all connected. She poured the green sludge into a glass and took a sip. So, when can we expect the funds? The real estate agent is pushing for a letter of intent. The casual entitlement of it all stunned me. Hold on. We haven't even agreed to this yet. I haven't accepted the terms. Her smile faltered. The light in her eyes dimmed. What do you mean, you haven't accepted? It's Gran's will. It's her last wish. Her last wish is for me to fund a business I believe is fundamentally dishonest, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. Chloe put her glass down with a thud. Dishonest. I help people, Mark. I give them hope. You think that's dishonest? I think selling $40 tap water and telling people it will align their chakras is dishonest, yes. I think telling someone an amulet can replace therapy is not just dishonest, it's dangerous. Her face hardened. The charismatic influencer evaporated, replaced by the scared little sister I used to defend on the playground. You've always done this, she said, her voice trembling. You've always looked down on me. Just because I don't see the world through your boring, black and white textbook doesn't mean I'm wrong. Gran understood. She was the only one who ever really saw me. Gran saw a granddaughter she loved, I shot back. She wasn't an expert in consumer protection laws or the ethics of alternative medicine. She was an old woman who found comfort in your stories, and you let her believe they were real. That was a low blow. I knew it the second it left my mouth. Chloe flinched as if I'd slapped her. Tears welled in her eyes. It is real, she whispered, her voice cracking. It's real to me. And it's real to the people I help. And then came the knockout punch. I need this, Mark, she said, the desperation raw in her voice. I'm in trouble, deep trouble. She confessed everything. The Etsy store was barely breaking even. To build the Aura Bloom brand, she had taken out high-interest loans. She had maxed out 3 credit cards to pay for web design, marketing consultants, and a disastrously expensive booth at a Mind, Body, Spirit convention. She was over $60,000 in debt. The rent on her apartment was 3 months overdue. The Aura Bloom empire I saw on Instagram was a facade, a carefully curated illusion of success held together by debt and wishful thinking. This isn't just about my dream anymore, she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. It's my only way out. Gran knew. I think she knew I was struggling. This was her way of saving me. Suddenly, the moral calculus of my dilemma shifted into an impossible new equation. This wasn't just about my principles versus her dream anymore. It was about my principles versus her survival. If I contested the will or refused the inheritance, the money would go to the Greyhounds, and Chloe would be left to drown in a sea of red ink. She'd face bankruptcy, maybe worse. Her life would be ruined. My refusal wouldn't just be a moral stand, it would be a direct act of financial destruction against my own sister. Was I paternalistically trying to save her from herself, or was I about to become the asshole who destroyed his sister's life over a principle? I felt like I was being torn in two. One part of me, the pragmatic science teacher, was screaming that this was a classic sunk cost fallacy. Giving her $250,000 wouldn't solve her problems, It would just be a bigger, more spectacular failure. It would be throwing good money after bad, enabling her financial illiteracy and her delusional business model. The best way to help her would be to let her fail, learn a hard lesson, and then help her pick up the pieces and find a real job. But the other part of me, the big brother, just saw his little sister crying in the kitchen. I remembered her as a kid, a whirlwind of glitter and imagination, always believing in things I couldn't see. I remembered Gran's hand on my arm, her voice soft but firm. You look after your sister, Mark. You're two halves of the same whole. Honoring her wish would mean saving Chloe, at least for now. It would be an act of love, of family loyalty. It would be what Gran wanted. But it would also mean selling a piece of my soul. The deadline to accept or reject the terms of the will was a week away. That week was the longest of my life. I barely slept. I'd lie awake at night drafting arguments for both sides in my head. Argument A: fund her. It's what Gran wanted. It saves Chloe from financial ruin. Maybe, just maybe, I'm wrong. Maybe there's something to her business that I can't see. Maybe with a proper investment, she could professionalize it, hire people who could steer her in a more ethical direction. I could be a silent partner, an investor. I could try to guide her from the inside. Is my intellectual pride really worth more than my sister's future? Argument B: refuse. This is madness. Giving an arsonist a fresh box of matches doesn't put out the fire. She's financially irresponsible and peddling dangerous nonsense. The $250,000 will be gone in a year, and she'll be right back where she started, only with a failed wellness studio to her name. The only responsible thing to do is to force her to confront reality. Let the inheritance go. I can help her with her debt myself, within reason. I can co-sign a consolidation loan, help her find a financial advisor, get her a real job. It will be painful, she will hate me for it, but it's the right thing to do. I even called the lawyer, a man named Mr. Aranathy, to see if there were any loopholes. Can I gift her the money after I inherit it? I asked, desperate. The clause is ironclad, he said, his voice dry as parchment. The funds must be a direct investment into the business entity. Your grandmother's instructions were unusually precise. She had her own legal counsel draw it up. It seems she anticipated your reluctance. Of course, she did. Gran knew me. She knew my skepticism. This wasn't a flaw in the will, it was the entire point. It was a test, a final lesson from beyond the grave. Was she testing my loyalty, my love, my capacity for faith? Or was she testing my integrity, my courage to stand up for what I believe is right, even when it's the hardest path? I honestly didn't know. The night before the deadline, Chloe came to my apartment. She looked small and fragile. She wasn't the bubbly influencer from Instagram or the defensive sister from the other day. She was just Chloe. She didn't plead or argue. She just handed me a small, velvet pouch. I opened it. Inside was a smooth gray and white striped stone. It's an agate, she said quietly. It's for balance and grounding, when you can't decide between your head and your heart. I rolled the cool stone in my palm. It was just a piece of silicon dioxide with mineral inclusions. A rock. A pretty rock, but a rock nonetheless. Gran gave it to me when I was thinking of dropping out of college to start or bloom, she continued, not looking at me. She said, your head will tell you it's crazy. Your heart will tell you it's your path. The truth is usually somewhere in the middle. She supported me, Mark. Not because she understood the business side of it, but because she understood me. She knew it made me happy. She knew it gave me a purpose. We stood there in silence for a long time. I looked at the rock in my hand, then at my sister. Her face was a mess of fear and hope. The two halves of the same whole. My head and my heart. The teacher and the brother. In that moment, I hated my grandmother. I hated her for her kindness, for her love, for this impossible, terrible choice she had left me. She had pinned the happiness of her two grandchildren against each other and asked me to be the one to cut the rope. So, Reddit, here I am. It's 2 a.m., the deadline is in a few hours, and I'm sitting here with $1 million check on one side of my desk and a $60,000 pile of my sister's debt on the other. I have to make a choice. I either become the financial engine of a business I find morally repugnant to save the sister I love, or I hold onto my principles, let a fortune slip through my fingers, and watch my sister's life implode, possibly fracturing our family forever. Whatever I do, I feel like I'm betraying someone. Either my conscience, my sister, or the memory of the grandmother who started this whole mess. So, Ater, am I the asshole if I refuse to fund my sister's dream, knowing it will lead to her financial ruin? Or am I the asshole if I sign the check, becoming a silent partner in a business I believe is a complete and utter scam? Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.